Thanks, everybody, and thanks for being here for another great AIM webinar, this time with our friends from OpenText. We're here talking about low code and the power of low code for process improvement. And look, organizations of all sizes and all types are under increasing pressure to digitally transform. And as the race for success heats up, organizations that continue to rely on old ways of working are at risk of being left behind by their more nimble competitors. And one way to modernize and get that agility is to adopt a low-code approach. Now, low-code application development is a way to design and develop applications with little or no coding and is a powerful platform for process improvement. Low-code platforms speed application development and extend the ability to innovate to a broader set of people. But how do you make the most of a low-code approach? Well, that's what we'll be discussing in this webinar today. We'll explore why low-code is important and what it is, how to bring process improvement closer to subject matter experts in your organization with IT's blessing and support, and how low-code creates opportunities for better customer experiences, both internal and external. Now look, the future of low-code is today. According to Gartner, low-code solutions make up 65% or will make up 65% of application development by 2024, excuse me. So get ready to learn more and hear actionable insights that you can use today to make the most of your efforts with low-code. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. Nick King is Director of Product Management at OpenText AppWorks, and he's worked with document management and content management solutions and in the industry for the past 18 years. He is an expert at document management and intelligent information management. Nick, are you with us today?
I am, Kevin. Yes, thanks very much.
Hello, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let me start with this simple question, perhaps not so simple. What exactly is low code? And what are the business challenges that make it so important today?
Sure, yeah. So low code is really, it's a modern approach to application development. So, typically a low code kind of tool allows a person to define application data that is going to be used in some sort of business process for an application, the business logic that's needed to kind of handle that, and the rules and stuff around how that data should be used and transformed and stuff. And then it allows you to build the user interface, but it's all done without writing traditional code. So, you don't have to go and learn Java or JavaScript or any of these things. It allows, anybody that's fairly, technically savvy, someone that understands Excel pivot tables or may have recorded some macros in the past, to really just with a bit of training, sit down in front of a computer and actually essentially build an application, become a developer using low-code tooling. And it's been widely adopted by process automation tools, case management tools, general application development platforms. You mentioned Gartner earlier. Gartner talk about how low-code is everywhere, and there's all sorts of different pockets of types of low-code tool. And the thing that distinguishes low-code from something that's just highly configurable, a lot of tools these days are highly configurable, and you even, Office, applications that we use today, you can go in and do all sorts of clever stuff with them. Many of us never do. But the thing that distinguishes an application or system that's just highly configurable from one that's a low-code tool is that you can write code when you need to add, complex business logic that can't be, defined in a simple kind of graphical way. Or you need to integrate with some legacy system or line of business system you've got that's got some weird interface to it, and you need some code to actually handle that. So so low code it means you do most of it without writing code, but you can then bring in developers to do the extra special bits that are sometimes needed. And in my experience, most of the time, depends on the tool, but most of the time you can do everything, 90% of the time these days with low code, no coding at all. And then that extra 5 or 10%, you just need a little bit of code to do something special. And the reason it's important and really taken off, and I think we'll probably see even greater adoption than you mentioned earlier, is that it allows business people that are technical, but don't write code or haven't written code since school or whatever, but they know the business, they understand what they do and what their team does. It helps them to design and build an application that really delivers tangible business benefits, often faster than using traditional development techniques, and usually with a long-term total cost of ownership, because you're not maintaining code and you're not having to update it. If you're using a tool from a vendor, then you rely on the vendor to update the tool and make it upgrade all the time easily and stuff. So you're really just managing those kind of definitions of your processes and your application UI. So that's why it's really important and why it's taking off.
As you're talking, it sort of reminds me of not too many years ago when you wanted to create a website. I've done many websites over the years. In the earlier days, it did take some coding to do that, whether you're doing that in HTML, or maybe it took some rather somewhat complex systems that were not that super easy to use, something like, well, WordPress perhaps.
Yeah.
To get a website created. And nowadays, most anyone can create a website with template driven software, and it's much easier these days to create a website. And so what you're talking about is a business application development that is not unlike that, where you can create business application developments with low code that would have taken a bunch of effort and specialized sort of skills to do. So how can we now use low code to accelerate our digital transformation and our process improvement? In what ways can we really apply it, and how does it play out today? Can you give us some examples of the application and the business benefits that are available today?
Sure. I mean, I've seen low code, as you mentioned, I've been doing this a very long time. Low code isn't anything that new, but it's evolved and really improved over the years. But I think the first thing is low code tools allow you to prototype a business kind of problem or a business process really rapidly. What would have taken days and weeks to kind of you'd go and prototype it and build it and then come back and show it, and then the business would say, oh, that's not like shouldn't be like that, we don't want that there, and actually we would we want the tab order, we tab here and we tab there and we want to use the keyboard and we want it to be like that. And then 3 days later you'd come back, or a week later you'd come back and show them again. With low code, you can do that in hours. I mean, I've sat in meetings with people using a low code tool where you actually prototype and come up with a first sort of design in a meeting, and you can try out ideas really rapidly. And the business, I've seen this happen where the business are amazed that the following day, what they said to you yesterday, you're already showing them the following day, and that's really really important. And I think the other thing is it really does bring the business champions, the business experts into that process, either directly themselves, and we could talk later about maybe teams and how we structure things, what works. But you can bring those business experts right into that development process. And which means that what you get out at the end of it is a tool or user experience that the business people want to use. So your adoption is so much greater. I've heard comments like, this is the best system we've ever been given, from end users, because it was one of their managers was involved in the process and knows what they do. And so that's really important. If you get good user adoption, then that helps accelerate that transformation process. And it allows you to iterate as well. So you deploy the solution. Maybe there's a business process or something behind it, and if you decide in a week's time, actually we need to improve that, or we can improve on it, we can do that. We can rapidly do that. And I think we'll talk later probably about IT's involvement and change management. But that really makes a big difference if you can iterate on that. And it also allows you to deploy lots of processes very quickly. So in a whole digital sort of transformation process in an organization, where it's not just one thing you're deploying or you want to improve, but many. We can talk about some use cases later and case studies I've seen, but you can deploy processes within days, especially if they're similar, but using the similar kind of concepts and similar building blocks and patterns. Once you've done the first one, it takes an X amount of time, but then the second one is always quicker, and the third one's even quicker still. And so it allows you to kind of do that process improvement and transformation of a business, much more efficiently over a period of time.
Well, that's super powerful. You're getting process owners closer to the development. You're doing it quicker, you're doing it faster, you can develop it. I'm wondering if it helps me sell my ideas or sell my strategies, since now I can develop something with rather low cost, rather quickly. I can kind of, I don't know if spitball is the right word for it, but I can develop something and sell it up the line now, so that I have something I can work with to get the support and buy-in that I need. Have you found that to be true with users that are now able to do things more, not only more rapidly, but with more support using a low-code approach?
Definitely. So there's a range of tools out there, and they vary, so the line of where coding starts is different, and again, we can talk later probably about different types of low-code tools, but there are some that allow you to, anybody, can actually start to prototype something. And typically what you find is, if it's a very small, simple process for just you or your team, you don't need anybody else. IT won't know, it's really is citizen development kind of work. But often when it starts to get a bit more serious, and you want to start, really automating that process, and to do that, you want to touch on another system, you update your accounts payable system, or you want to go and read something in Salesforce, you can't as a general user do that. So you do need IT's involvement. So, but having prototyped it and shown that you're improving the business by doing it as far as you can, helps you to then go to IT and say, look, we want to take this to the next level, and we want to mature this even further. So that does help you then sell it to the IT department to say, right, can we now make this a proper, a bigger thing, and get some input from IT?
Well, I get excited about low code because it empowers process owners and change agents in the organization to do it. But you bring up an important point, and one that we should highlight and clarify, that while you are enabled as a process improvement or change agent, to be successful, you really do need to have a cooperative partnership with IT. Can you describe that, and how to bring application development closer to subject matter experts in my organization, but also with IT's blessing and support and cooperation?
Yeah, so what I've seen work most successfully is really where you have a kind of a steering committee. People call it different things, a center of excellence in the business, or a steering committee around a particular process that is more significant, let's say. And so those, or a program office. So those kind of typically involve members of IT, business owners, developers, both proper what we call pro code developers who write the hardcore Java code and stuff, and then the low code developers that really understand the business and can build the kind of the shell and the framework of the application. And you bring those in, and sometimes bring in user interface experienced people, because some tools, low code tools, allow you to have real control over the UI design, user interface design. And when I used to give training on low code tooling, I used to always start with a slide that low code is great. It allows you to build an application really fast, but it can allow you to build a really bad application really quickly.
You can mess things up pretty fast.
User interface, especially user interface, it's the business process. It's process modeling has been around for a long time, and it's hard to go that wrong with it. But user interface design, if a tool allows you to have really fine control over everything on the screen, and you build navigation stuff, you do need some user experience people, or some training yourself to really not fall into the common pitfalls. And we haven't got time to go into them now, but it's a simple alignment of things on a screen, and understanding how people track things on a screen, and minimizing mouse clicks and stuff. So sometimes you need UI. Some tools don't give you that much freedom and actually guide you more with user interface. So, but yes, definitely building a center of excellence, a team that will kind of own that. The IT are needed, because the moment you say I remember being in a meeting once with a customer saying, yeah, someone asked, can we add a new checkbox on there and deploy that tomorrow on that form? We said, of course you can. Great, no problem. It's low code. Someone in the back of the room from IT, sharp intake of breath, that might take a month to make that change. So you do have to work with IT to get the permissions to update other systems or read data from other systems. But that works really well, because then their IT are involved, and they can, you get their blessing, and they can manage it and know what you're doing. and it doesn't really delay the process, because you just build that, those kind of milestones and those gates into your kind of release process. And so it also allows you then to really kind of almost productize the process. And I've seen companies that have had, a small center of excellence with maybe 2 or 3 developers, getting requests from the business, then, low code developers getting requests from the business to, well, can we change this process? Can we get rid of this legacy tool we've been using for years that we can't update anymore, and rebuild that process in your tool? And suddenly these people get a pipeline of work, for the coming year of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 processes to build, using low code tools, because it kind of generates that kind of interest and that kind of what's the word, momentum, I suppose.
So what we're talking about here is really not just the technology, but also the people parts of it, the cultural parts of it. It's important to build those collaborative bridges with different folks in the organization that have different roles to play. You mentioned a center of excellence. I think that is probably something that most folks maybe overlook. Is that a common barrier to overcome when it comes to really making the most of low code?
It can be. As I say, it depends on the kinds of processes that you're building, or the application you're building, and how advanced you want to get. So yeah, but it can be. I think the other thing is, the other issue I've seen with low-code tooling is where you put a low-code tool in the hands of a traditional developer and expect them to be happy. And often traditional developers, who are used to having complete control over what they can build, write code, they take as long as they want, but they'll write loads of code and do whatever you ask for. Complain about low-code tools because there are restrictions. We typically, in AppWorks, we talk about building blocks. You take building blocks like Lego, building bricks, and you plug them together, and they kind of find that frustrating sometimes because they can't do exactly what they want. And then,
Right.
where they write code, that code has to fit into a certain hook or an extension point, that is supported by the platform. So, you have to kind of, know the audience, but say when you bring that team together of the traditional developers who'll do the clever stuff, they can do more of that kind of clever stuff and add value, and then the business people can do their thing. It really works really well.
So it's important to understand where it fits and where it may not. I think that's maybe where Gartner is coming from, where they're talking about 65% of application development by 2024 will be a low code solution. Well, that kind of makes sense since some things are not appropriately done with a low code approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I've seen, where you do try and build, a more complex code essentially with a business process, for example, and it's, you can, but it's not necessarily the best thing to do. There are times when it's best to write code and times when it's best not to, which is why I say for the, low code tools allow you to build very simple, I kind of, I just flippantly call them the kind of office party management application. We're going to plan an office party and we need a small app to track who's coming and who's ordered what food, or this kind of stuff. Anybody can do that. But the moment you want to kind of, it's an accounts payable process or an invoice or a loan application or something slightly more technical, then, you need to be careful.
We are speaking with Nick King, Director of Product Management at OpenText AppWorks. We're talking about low-code application development, process improvement. Now, Nick, tell me a little bit about how we can apply low-code and a low-code approach to things that we care about here in this industry. In other words, how can I enable my workforce to keep pace with highly regulated and collaborative processes while, keeping compliant and in information governance applied using low-code approach?
Yeah, so it's a good question because highly regulated and collaborative often don't go well together.
Right.
Collaborative can be more fuzzy, and whereas regulated, you need to know who's done what when and guarantee the compliance of the data and stuff. So I think what I've seen is that where you can mix and match traditional kind of process management, business process management, which is, very kind of straight through processing, automates things, but, strong auditing, so you know what's happened when. If you combine that with case management, which is the more dynamic, ad hoc, people-driven kind of process part, then you can actually, meet both requirements. And any of these low-code tools, if they're any good, have proper audit trails and that can't be tampered with and all this kind of stuff for the to meet the compliance regulations. But it allows you then to build, again, a business process where the parts that have to be really strictly managed and controlled are done with a business process, and then the bits that require the user to be more, decide what happens when. In certain instances, you can skip a step, or you can pass it to somebody else, or you can bring in an expert for an opinion, all the while tracking and keeping the audit trail of that. If you can mix and match those two kind of patterns of case management and process management, then you can typically do it. And actually, again, what I've seen in more recent years is that is the pattern. You typically have an overarching kind of case model, which is more dynamic and more fluid. And then those bits that have to be really controlled and you can't allow someone to skip or not do, those are then managed with the process. And then obviously the actual platforms themselves need to be managed, which again comes back to that whole steering committee kind of center of excellence with IT involved. Is you need IT to make sure that the deployment process conforms with any regulations. Only certain people with the right permissions can actually make a change to a system, so that you're not changing something unnecessarily or uncontrollably. So again, it comes back to that kind of steering committee. And the other thing I would say is reporting. So too many times when I back in the day when I was in consulting, you start a project and the thing had been sold, and you bought the tool and it does reporting, and that's great. And then you talk to the customer and you start to build out the process and say, well, what do you want to report? And they go, oh, we don't really know everything. We just need to be able to report on it. And you get to the end of the project and there'd be no time left. And they say, well, where are the reports? And you say, well, you didn't tell me what you wanted, and we haven't built reporting in, and we didn't allow for it. And so, being able to report though on and manage and track and see what's gone on, allows you to see what's inefficient or see room for improvement, and then do that iteration piece. So again, a tool that makes reporting easy and not hard, I would say is important.
Can I automate my information governance processes using a low-code approach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's very suited to that. I mean, information governance, covers all kinds of things, structured data, unstructured information. And again, a lot of the process kind of tools and case tools that are low-code platforms also allow you to integrate content management in with those processes. So then they allow you to really manage the structured data and the unstructured information that goes with it. And again, that's a very common pattern that we see at OpenText.
You mentioned case management. To me, that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to customer experiences, both internal customers and external customers. Can you describe how low code creates opportunities to move the needle in terms of better customer experiences?
Yeah, sure. So again, historically, process management and case management was often, in the business. It was, still, maybe paper files coming in and being scanned, and then they'd kick off a process and you'd manage it, which was great. But what we see more and more these days is that, all these tools have good ways of allowing you to, either through APIs or directly in the tool themselves, to really push that case management and that process management out to an end user, whether it's a citizen in the kind of public sector space, or a company's end user customers directly. So whether you're applying for a service or purchasing something, or applying for a loan or a mortgage or something, you do that from the website. And so straight away, as soon as you're on that website filling out as a customer the form, and you hit submit, that's already inside case management or process management. And so, we've seen customers that really reduce that kind of cycle time for that kind of customer experience down from weeks, down to days, down to hours, and even in sometimes these days, you see it happening in minutes. You apply for a new loan and you get a pre-approval within minutes. That's all because you can push that whole application, that process, right out to that end user. And we see this in public sector a lot as well, really around, service requests. Citizens are applying for permits for things, or, notifying the local government that their refuse wasn't collected yesterday. That's all done through a government portal that you log in, you authenticate in with a government ID, but then behind the scenes, it's all case management and process management, handling that, making sure it's done properly. And then, you said internal and external, I think. And so, that's the external kind of use case where, as a citizen, you get, really rapid response. You get great transparency of what's going on in that process. That it's being handled. When the status of it changes. But internally, again, it comes back to the comment I made earlier that, because the system has been built with the way that the business wants to work, or the case handlers want to work, the adoption is great, and so it's very efficient. We really look at OpenText, how the user experience of how many clicks does it take to do something, and we're always looking to optimize that, both for the developer building the app, but also for the people that are using the applications. It's really about giving you that streamlined experience, and I think that's where low code really comes into play, because you can buy applications off the shelf, or we all use tools where the user interface is what it is, and you learn to live with it and you use it, and that's great. But the real benefit comes when when I log in and I'm handling maybe a loan application. The screen shows me everything I need in one place, and so I can really quickly just do what I need to do, hit next, and do the next one. And so you get these streamlined user interfaces that again just help to kind of reduce that cycle time.
Can you give us one example of a use case or a customer that you feel has been particularly successful using this approach? What did they do, and what were the results, and how can we do it too?
So there's many, to be honest. It's always difficult picking one, but one of them is a food manufacturer that came to us and sort of said, it's a long story, but they had 3 months to move off of an ERP system, and for whatever reason. So they were looking for a way of doing that, moving on to a new ERP system, a new accounts payable process, and some other things they wanted to automate. And so they are able to, with a low-code tool, deploy an accounts payable and an accounts receivable system in 3 months, integrated with JD Edwards. And so they added some extra processes on top of that. And so that was done in 3 months. So that was not it was a complex mission critical system that was done. And then they went on and deployed that one region initially in 3 months, and then they've been able to roll that out worldwide, and have been very happy with it, and so that kind of speed, 3 months, if you'd said that 5 years ago, we can deploy you something and have it up in production in 3 months, no one would have believed you. But with low code tools, and some pre-built kind of processes around accounts payable, then they were able to do that. So, and there's many examples like that where the speed of delivery is impressive, or the range of things that a company does and types of processes they deliver is impressive.
Especially when linked with other tools like, say, robotic process automation. Can you describe the linkage between low code and RPA, maybe AI, some of the machine learning techniques, and how they all work together?
So it's an interesting question, because RPA tools are themselves in many ways a low-code tool, because you can configure your robot to do desktop automation, and you can often write code, and you can do some very technical things that those robots will do. But what again works really well is when you have a mix of, and we have customers doing this today where they're using RPA tools for certain things, but it's never on its own, it's not enough, because they're about desktop automation, and they're notoriously prone to failure and things, as anything that's kind of automated with screen grabbing and automation is likely to be. And so they complement, typically they use a process tool as the main driver for process automation. And then they use the RPA tool to complement it to do certain things. So where, say, they're using a legacy green screen system still, it doesn't have an API, an application programming interface that you could write code against. All it has is a screen that you can automate. Then the robot comes in to update the legacy system. And that's the kind of thing where RPA tools come into their own, where you can't do it with a traditional method, or it is a desktop automation. You want to read hundreds of lines of an Excel file and then kick off. The robot will kick off lots of processes or case models based on the data it reads in an Excel file. Because, and I've seen this with customers today, where the only way they get data out of some system is through an Excel file. So they drop, this system dumps the file into a folder. The RPA tool picks it up and then automates, kicks off the processes automatically.
We are speaking with Nick King, Director of Product Management at OpenText AppWorks. You can find out more at opentext.com. Now, Nick, how does OpenText help with all of this? Do you have some next steps that you might recommend and some resources that we might look at?
Of course, sure. I mean, obviously, we have low-code tools for process automation and case management. So I'd really recommend you go and look at some of our case studies that we have. I think we'll share some links later. So I think that's really important to do. And then I would really encourage you to go and look at low-code tools that are out there in the market. There's so many, but really look at them properly. Look at the capabilities of each one. Look at the limitations of each one. Some are good for doing those kind of very simple processes and dipping your toe into the water of low code for very low cost. But you'll find that some of those tools have limits, more limits than others, and limits on the number of processes that can run or the complexity you can build out there. And also it depends what type of application you want to build. If you want to do process management, case management, are you using unstructured information in a content management system, for example, that is, and I see this a lot, is most processes that people build with low-code tools these days typically involve process. They involve documents of some sort, whether even if it's just one document being generated as part of the process that's then stored for long-term retention. But so look at the low-code tools, look at what there are. And please come and talk to us. We have many years experience of delivering process automation and using low-code tooling to do that. So please, check out the website, look at the market, compare low-code tools, and try them out, and then come and talk to us.
All right, Nick. Well, I would like to open it up at this time to our audience for questions about all of this. Let's take advantage of having Nick with us today, an expert in low code. Bring us your questions. What is inhibiting your movement forward with low code? What have been some of your successes? What are some of your questions for Nick? And what are some of your recommendations for the rest of us? Now, Nick, I know we are having some questions come in. Cyrus here is asking, what are the best practices in terms of change management and application governance for low-code applications?
So I think it does come back to that kind of idea of a steering committee, where you definitely need IT involved to approve the changes you're making and understand the things that will be coming, because any IT department has a budget and have constraints on them, so they need to know what's coming down the line that they'll need to be involved in. So definitely, take that into consideration, and work with IT. Don't try and push IT. Work with IT to do that. And I think definitely, again, bring in make sure that you bring in business owners into that process, so that they understand changes and can communicate those changes to the people that will be using the application. Because and one of the worst things I've seen, what you shouldn't do is try and rebuild the system in low code. If you have a legacy system that works in a certain way, and you think, well, we don't want to support that anymore, for whatever reason, we're going to use a new tool to replace it. The worst thing you can do is try and from my experience, is rebuild the system to work exactly the same way, because low-code tools, in my experience, won't work exactly the same way. You'll need to work with the end users and say, look, change is coming. It won't look the same, it won't feel the same, but it will be better. It will be different, but it will be better. Because if you try and bend a new tool to work exactly the same way as an old tool, you'll get into a whole heap of pain. You will write code to try and replicate things, but then you're maintaining more code and it just gets more complex. So really, I would say work with the tool itself, try and do as much in low code as possible, and work with the business to educate them on the differences that will happen. But yeah, that's but really it's about IT. Any serious, what I would consider a serious process, just needs that partnership of IT and business.
Tell me about the skills that might be needed. My team, I want to bring low code into my team, my process owners. What kind of skills are needed? Who will be involved with the low code project, and what level of programming experience or any kind of experience is really needed to get started with a product like AppWorks?
Yeah, so really, you need training on AppWorks. You need to understand, and you can do, self-paced tutorials that we have on our websites and stuff. You can do self-paced trials and tutorials and things to learn it. We run training courses that you can attend to then go to that next level. I would say the best thing to do is actually use a tool. There's nothing worse than going on a training course and then not using the thing you've learned. And what we've seen work really well is where you do a kind of a mentorship program. So typically, we'd suggest customers go on some training, use the tool a bit themselves. And it's really people that, as I said earlier, people that understand Excel and someone who understands pivot tables, a bit more technical concept, understands data a bit, can learn about, and understands what a flow chart is, and if then else kind of, if this is true, then I want to go that way. And if that's not true, then I go that way. And this is maybe the default way, unless something else happens. Go on training, use the tool. And typically what works well is to bring in somebody who's already used the tool before for the first thing you build, the first application or first process you design, a services company or something that's got experience with the product. And then gradually you kind of wean off of that and you do the second one yourself, with more time. And over a very rapid amount of time, actually, you can become self-sufficient. Because, and I'll be honest, any low-code tool, has pitfalls and things that you can do wrong and design badly. It does help to have some experience and some guidance at the outset, just to avoid some of those common pitfalls. I talked about user interface design. I remember a long time ago, before I was even aware of what user interface patterns were, that I remember doing a proof of concept for a company, and they sent what I built off to their user experience team in Dallas, and overnight I got back this feedback that what I built was absolutely appalling. And I learned a lot of lessons then, so some user experience kind of training maybe, or just read up on the internet. There's enough things today that you can read up on just to understand some very basic principles, I think.
Well, Nick, we're starting to run short on time. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. So if you have a question for Nick, now is the time to bring it up. This one is coming from Hoggard. Hoggard says, we are an OpenText client. Does AppWorks integrate easily with such OpenText platforms as Content Server? Do you have any info that is useful in developing a business case to present to IT and calm their not out of the box fears?
It's a great question. So yes, it does integrate. So AppWorks, our low-code process automation platform, integrates it's out of the box. It integrates with Content Server, with Documentum, with any of our OpenText content management systems. Literally there is nothing. It's just one simple configuration for an IT person to do or system admin person to do. And as a low-code developer, you add, we call it the content building block, into your user interface in your application, and you don't have to do anything else as a developer. Whether it's Documentum, whether it's Content Server, you don't care. So we remove that complexity from the developer of the application. It can also work with any CMS compliant repository. So not just open text products. And
Now,
in terms of the business case, I think that's, it's really, showing that by using a tool like AppWorks and your low-code tool, that you can get a business benefit. It's about, at the end of the day, for me, it's about business value. If it doesn't help you do something faster or cheaper, more efficiently, it's not worth doing. But if you can show that and reference case studies to say that we publish that show the kind of ROI and stuff that people get, I think that helps.
All right, Nick, one last question. Can I build mobile apps with low code, or is it a web-based only app?
Oh, no, definitely you can build mobile apps. I mean, more and more we see that people want to generate, kind of two flavors of the application. The main one they run on a tablet or a desktop browser. Most of these are browser-based now. That has kind of what I think of as the full functional thing. And then often you have a mobile version of it, which is more for the the simpler tasks. Either creating something. An example would be, it's a funny one, but a toilet cleanliness application that someone can go around when they're cleaning toilets and just on their app just go, yeah, I've cleaned the toilets, and it's logged in a system, that it's been done. Or a manager, on the go, traveling, wants to review and approve documents. They can do that from their mobile app very quickly without having to bring up a big browser and navigate through, to their inbox. Very simple app on their phone. It's part of the overall process. They just do it on their tab, on their mobile device. It's a very common use case.
All right. That is Nick King with OpenText AppWorks. You can find out more at opentext.com. Nick, thank you so much for your comments today. Stick around, but at this point, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Nina. Now, Nina, tell us more about what's going on and what's next for AIM.
Yes, Kevin. So we still have the industry watch that is a hot topic this year for AIM. So if you haven't already, please feel free to download your copy of the 2022 Industry Watch Report. This report combines independent research, data trends, and actionable takeaways. So visit aim.org 2022-research to download the report today. And also a direct link has been put in the chat. So before we wrap up today, we do want to give a big thank you to OpenText for sponsoring this webinar. And as we bring this to a close, I'd like to ask Nick if he has any closing remarks or anything that he'd like to share with the audience at this time.
Yeah, just really to say thank you for allowing me to participate and share kind of some of the things I've seen over the past few years. And I would encourage anybody, considering, embarking on a low-code kind of journey, dive in and see what you can do with it. It does really, bring business, tangible business benefits if it's done properly.
Absolutely. And what about you, Kevin? Any last-minute takeaways?
Well, as you can tell, I'm excited about low code as a enabling platform for process improvement. Look, it's just the future of low code is today. To gain the kinds of advantages that we need to be competitive in the future, we're going to need to do things like low code, RPA, to get that agility where it really makes a difference in terms of customer experience, in terms of process improvement. And it's not just about saving money or saving time. It's about the experience that folks have when they are working with the organization. And low code gives us the ability to really do that quickly and more completely, perhaps, than ever in the past. So it's been a great pleasure to get Nick's feedback and advice on how to use low code in a real way that makes a difference.
Absolutely. As we bring this webinar to a close, a few last minute reminders. We are recording this webinar, so you can catch anything you want to hear again in a recap email that will be sent in the next few hours. And a link to the resources for this webinar was put in the chat. You'll find a copy of this presentation as well as additional resources through that link. And don't forget to take our feedback survey and let us know how we did. Once again, a big thank you to our underwriter, OpenText. Without their support, Without the support from our solution providers, we wouldn't be able to provide you with free educational programs like our webinar. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. And this is Nina from AIIM saying, see you next time. Take care, everyone.